This is a Shavuos mimer. The goal, of course, being we should finish it by Shavuos. We will, or of course, we won't. This was from the first night of Shavuos, meaning after a night of learning in Tufshin Chaf Zayin in 1967. And it's based on this famous concept that is in a number of Maimarim, so you might be familiar with it. Tzena Uri'ena Bnos Tzion Melech Shlomo Batara She'itra Lo Imo. This is a very famous pasuk that Hasidus discusses on various levels from Shir HaShirim. If you read Shir HaShirim, is actually, when I was preparing the mimer, I wanted to look up a quote, and I just started reading, and it's like, wow, this is like amazing stuff. There's really intense stuff here. A lot of such powerful psukim. So Tzena and Bnos Tzion, go out and see daughters of Tzion, the Melech Shlomo, the King Shlomo, Ba'atara She'itra Lo Imo, with the crown that his mother crowned him. So in this, there's a midrash that Rabbi Yochanan heard. He asked Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Yossi, tell me what your father says about this pasuk. And Rabbi Yossi told him this whole midrash that we know, that we've learned before, that there's this king and he has an only daughter and he loves her so much, he calls her my daughter. Then he loves her even more, he calls her my sister. Then he loves her even more, he calls her my mother, my daughter, my sister, my mother. And so too, the neshamas, the souls, Hashem loves us so much, he calls us his daughter. He loves us even more, he calls us his sister. He loves us even more, he calls us his mother. And of course, the Tana of Rebbe Elazar brought psukim in the name, of course, of his father, proving all of these dimensions in our relationship to Hashem. Daughter, sister, mother. And Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was so overwhelmed when he heard this explanation of Rebbe Elazar in the name of his father, Reb Yossi, that it says he kissed him. He kissed him on his head and he said, wow, if I only came to hear this, it was worth it. And we said a kiss means you're like so overwhelmed, you're so intently affected, you can't even talk about it. That was the kiss. It's like beyond words. That's how intently excited Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was in hearing this Torah on these words. We're Hashem's daughter, we're Hashem's sister, we're Hashem's mother. Now, obviously, this relates to the pasuk because it says about the King Shlomo representing Hashem, Ba'atara She'itra Lo Imo, with the crown that his mother, and now we know his mother, who's the mother of Hashem. This means the Jewish people crowned him. So we have to understand this. We have to understand what made Rashbi so excited. Obviously, we're coming soon to the energy of Rashbi. Lag Baimer is Tuesday. So what made Rashbi so excited that he couldn't even talk? He could only give him a kiss. Second thing we want to understand is this whole concept of like who's crowning who. Because we see on one way we're crowning Hashem. That's what the pasuk is saying. Ba'atara She'itra Lo Imo. The Melech Shlomo representing Hashem with the crown that his mother, and now decoded, we know his mother means the Jewish people. The Jewish people are crowning Hashem. But we also know that it says by Matan Torah, this is a Matan Torah mimer, that at the time when the Jews said Nasa v'nishma, right, and we preceded Nasa before Nishma, we said, we'll do. We don't need to understand. We're on board. We're signing up. Whatever you want, we're doing it. Then we'll find out. Nasa v'nishma. It says 600,000 malachim came down, and each one crowned the Jews with two crowns, a crown for Nasa, a crown for Nishma. So that very famous midrash that we've all heard is saying that the malachim, obviously Hashem's agents, are crowning us. Hashem is crowning us. The pasuk says, Ba'atara She'itra Lo Imo, the crown that his mother, Klal Yisrael, crowned him, Hashem. We're crowning Hashem. So the pasuk of Shir HaShirim says we crown Hashem. This midrash, this very famous midrash on Matan Torah, says Hashem crowned us. Putting it a little bit together based on a midrash, on the pasuk Kadoshim Tihu Ki Kadosh Ani, you are holy because I am holy. So the mashal is a king that the people of the country made him three crowns. What does he need three crowns for? What did he do with them? One he took for himself, and two he put on the heads of his sons. So we could say here, the neshamos are crowning Hashem. Well, the crowns are coming from the malachim, the three crowns, because the malachim say, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Those are the three crowns, just like the word kadosh means separate, and the crown is sort of separate. It's encompassing, it's surrounding the body, it's not part of the body. So as the malachim, the Bnei HaMedina, the people of the country are saying kadosh, 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 these are the three crowns. And truly, before Matan Torah, the Bnei HaMedina were the malachim, right? Before Matan Torah, there was a gzeira. Elyonim and Tachtonim don't meet. What's up stays up, what's down stays down. So the Bnei HaMedina of Hashem, Hashem's country people, were the Malachim. They're up with Hashem, so to speak, and they're crowning Hashem as they say, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. So, okay, so very clearly, the Malachim are crowning Hashem, and Hashem graciously, from these crowns, gave us 2 out of the 3. But on the other hand, we still have a problem because of our pasuk. Because our pasuk says, B'melech Shlomo, referring to Hashem, the ultimate king of peace, the crown that his mother, and who's the mother of Hashem? The Malachim are not Hashem's mother, it's just us. We crowned Hashem. Based on everything else, it seems the Bnei HaMedina, the people of Hashem's country, which before Matan Torah for sure, that's the Malachim, they crown Hashem. And we know the Malachim crown Hashem. When they say Kadosh, 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 that's the crown. And Hashem took the crown, and he put one on his head, and he gives the Malachim 2 to bring down to us. It all makes sense, except our pasuk makes it not make sense. Because our pasuk says, Batar she'ishra lo imo. So it says in the Gemara Chulin that the Malachim cannot say Shira above until the Jews say Shira below. So our Shira precedes, and we don't just mean chronologically here, we mean in terms of weight, merit, spiritual energy. Our Shira is higher than the Shira of the Malachim. Our Shira causes the Shira of the Malachim. So the Bnei HaMedina, the people of Hashem's country, the Malachim are crowning Hashem, but their crowning Hashem is really just an expression of our crowning Hashem. We sing Shira to Hashem. We're fashioning the crowns from our Shira, which then, through the intermediary of the Malachim, is then given to Hashem. With their Kadosh, 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 they're really transferring, so to speak, our Shira. And then Hashem takes these crowns and he gives 2 of the crowns that we really fashioned back to us. So to understand these crowns that we're saying we crown Hashem and Hashem crowns us, so to understand a bit the idea of these crowns, right? What does this mean? This idea of crowning, like what does it mean to crown Hashem? What does it mean for Hashem to crown us? What are we talking about here? So if we're looking at this idea, it says 2 points. The Rebbe raised, I'm going to say this quickly because we're sort of reviewing. I know not everyone knows what we did last time, so it's a slow review. But it says that 2 different ways where we see, so to speak, as if the Torah is not entirely ours or was offered elsewhere as well. So we see this in 2 different ways. One way is, it says, again, very famous midrash, that by Matan Torah, when Moshe went up to Shemayim, the Malachim said, what? You're taking your beautiful Torah and you're giving it to a human? Keep it here with us. Like we're the ones that can appreciate it. And Hashem said to Moshe, "No, Moshe, answer them." And Moshe answers them. And of course, there's a famous, amazing sikh of the Rebbe on that, which we're not going to go into now because it's not relevant to this mimer. And the Malachim were like, wow. And they were like, wow, this is amazing stuff. And they were moided that yes, the Torah belongs to the Jewish people. And they even gave Moshe presents to express this idea of really the Torah being ours. So we have that concept, which again is a famous midrash, and it's an interesting midrash, and the Rebbe has a fascinating explanation on that midrash in the Sikha. But implicit within the midrash is this concept that on some level, there's a thought that the Torah is not ours, that the Torah should be the Malachim. I mean, it didn't work out because Hashem said to Moshe, answer them, and Moshe effectively answered them, and they accepted the answer. But the essence fact that we could say that there's a, as we call it, havamina, there's a thought that the Torah should not be ours, that's already like, what's going on? And we see something very similar in another very famous midrash that we all know. We might not think about too much, but we all know, which is, it says that before Matan Torah, Hashem went to the entire world and offered the whole world, every nation of the world, the Torah, and they all refused it except us. Again, we know the midrash. We know what it says in that midrash. We get it, but question is, what's going on? Why is Hashem offering the Torah to someone else? An explanation that because he offered it and they didn't accept it, so now we have like a balat batishkeit on their possession. So it opens us the channels for us to receive really all the strength of the world, because the world was presented with the Torah, the world rejected the Torah, we accepted the Torah. So, but still, Hashem doesn't play games. Hashem's not like Stam saying, well, I have this cute trick here. I'm going to offer you the Torah. I know you can't accept the Torah, but by my offering you the Torah, it's going to be good for the Jewish people. That's not what Hashem does. If Hashem offered the Torah to the world, that must mean on some level, the world could receive the Torah. What's going on? If the Malachim are complaining, that means on some level, the Malachim feel they have a right to the Torah. So what's going on? So those were the questions that we are dealing with. Now, to answer the questions, we're going to start talking about something else, of course. As we know, that's a great classical way to answer the questions, is to talk about something else. So when we're looking at this idea of the Jews and their relationship to Hashem as versus the Malachim and their relationship to Hashem, we could look at another very famous pasuk. And we're up to now the third section of this mimer. For anyone that's going to afterwards look inside to explore it more. And the very famous pasuk has to do with Yaakov, right? When Yaakov is that one night between his many sleepless years when he's learning in the Yeshiva Shem and Aver, to his many sleepless years when he's working for Lavan for some 20 years. In between, he had one night when he slept, right? That one night that he slept on Har Moriah, and he has a vision, and the vision is a ladder. A ladder that's planted on the earth and extends to the heaven. And there are two midrashim about that ladder. So one midrash says that ladder represents the ladder of tefillah, of our prayers, right? We're on the earth and we're climbing up to heaven as we daven. Another midrash says the ladder represents Yaakov himself. He's the ladder. And this is the ladder, if you remember, and of course we all know this dream, this vision, it says the malachim of Hashem are going up and down on the ladder. So Yaakov, who represents the Jew, he's the ladder. He's the point of connection. He's, as it says about Yaakov, he's the brich hatichon. He's the central beam. Just like in the Mishkan, there were the beams that were on the outside. If you think of the krushim of the Mishkan, there were three beams in each keresh. Two were external and one that went through all the beams on each side was internal. That was called the brich hatichon, the middle beam, the beam that pierced through the wood itself of the krushim. So it means this which pierces through all the levels. This is Yaakov, piercing through all of Seder Hishtalshalos. So the ladder's on the ground. The ladder reaches the heaven. This ladder represents Tefillah, but this ladder represents Yaakov. And Yaakov is the Brich HaTichon, that central beam of the Mishkan, that beam that pulls everything together. And Yaakov represents the Jew, because Yaakov is the embodiment of Klal Yisrael. So this ladder, this is the ladder of the Neshamos. We have Sulam Mutzav Artza, V'Roisha Magia Hashamayma. The ladder is, the feet of the ladder, the base of the ladder is on planet Earth. That's the Neshamos within bodies, us, physical beings in this world. But the head of the ladder, the top of the ladder, reaches to the heavens, because the source of the Neshamos is higher beyond Seder Hishtalshalos. Really? You know, when we speak about it in Tanya, we speak of the source of the Neshamos as the highest level of the highest world, Chachma Vatzilos, because that's about as high as we talk in Tanya. But really, the source of the Neshamos is embedded in Atzmos HaMahos itself, is embedded in Hashem's essence and being. So we are this ladder of V'nei Sulam Mutzav Artza V'Roisha Magia Hashamayma. We're on planet Earth, Mutzav Artza, right? Our feet are on the ground, but the head of the ladder is in the highest heavens, because our soul is really still enrooted in Atzmos. Meaning, It's not that, well, yeah, that's where we came from. No, it's much bigger than that. The neshama, as Tanya says in Chacham Vatzilos, which is really embedded within Atzmos, this is the neshama that's within each one of us, right? The neshama goes from Atzmos, Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya, but we don't change. We don't change. It's still this neshama, it's still this amazing piece of Hashem himself. That's the power of the neshama, which is not like the malachim. This is not the reality of the malachim. This is only our reality. This is what we have, not what the malachim have. The malachim start off on a very high level, but like every other creation, they start off, but then they descend. But the neshamas, wherever we reach, we're still the original godliness of the neshama. And this is a tremendous foundational difference between the neshama and anything else. And in our case, because of course, that's what this mimer has been talking about, like who's crowning Hashem and the dynamics between the neshamos and the malachim. And because we crown Hashem, the malachim can crown Hashem, and we give Hashem the crowns, the malachim give Hashem the crowns, and the malachim give us Hashem's crowns that they made, that really we made. We, the neshamos, and the malachim are fundamentally different because we still maintain our origin God energy. We still have that power. We are not what we call the hischadshus. Hischadshus meaning this anomaly, this thing that shouldn't be. No, the reality of the neshamos is that this is what we are. We are this reality. We are this energy. This is who we are. This is an amazing, amazing force. And that's why it doesn't make a difference what world we're on, so to speak. It doesn't make a difference. Whatever world we're on, we're the same energy. We're not changing. This is who we are. But by the malachim, it's not the same. They don't have that energy. They're a creation. We're one with the creator. The Rebbe compares this to the difference between oisias of hakika, engraved writings, and written writings. What's Matan Torah? Of course, we know the whole idea of Matan Torah is that Matan Torah was oisias of hakika. Hakika meaning engraved, right? And engraved as verses written. The luchos were engraved. It says charus al haluchos. The writing was engraved on the tablets. A Sefer Torah is written. Everything else is written. What's the difference? I mean, there's, again, much that Chassidus speaks about oisias hakika, engraved letters. But the basic point is, in engraving, the letter is the essence of the matter. The letter is not put on the stone that you could, like, maybe, if you were careful, could scrape it off. There's no scraping it off. It's now the stone itself. Regular letters, written letters, are not the parchment. They're not the paper. They're put on it. This is the Chiddush of Matan Torah. The Chiddush of Matan Torah is oisias hakika, that it's engraved. It's the matter itself. We're not adding anything. In other words, if you have a written letter, if you could imagine like a letter on a Sefer Torah, the ink is being written on the parchment, and the ink actually conceals the parchment. You can't see the parchment because you see the ink. That's a letter. That's everything else. The Jew is hakika. The Jew is this thing itself. He is the parchment. Our being is Eibishter. And there's no other way to say it, and there's no other way to explain it. And that's why we are different from everything else. We're different from every other human. We're different from every other Gashmias reality. We're different from every other spiritual reality. We're comparing ourselves now not to Noachais or humans or animals or physical realities. We're comparing ourselves to Malach. And we're saying the neshama is Hakika and the Malach is Ksiva. The neshama is the essence of the thing, and that's why we don't change. And that's why the energy of the neshama in Atzilus, the energy of the neshama of Atzmos, the energy of the neshama within a limited body with all of our limitations, and we don't have to talk about our limitations. We don't have to complain about our limitations. We know our limitations, but our neshama is still the same essence energy. It's hakika. Hakika, you don't take away, you can't lessen it. It's hakika. As versus a malach or anything else, which is an addition. And that's why a malach on one level of reality will look different if it's on another level of reality. And that's why a malach is the concept of hischatshus. Hischatshus meaning constantly we have to renew it because it's an aberration. It shouldn't be. So we keep pushing it into existence. We keep pushing this formation of God's energy to be this thing. Neshama is neshama. Neshama is not changing. Hakika is not going anywhere. No hischatshus. We don't have to re-energize for our neshama to be. Our energy, the energy of our neshama is, as versus anything else. Like we say in our davening every day, right? That for all the rest of reality, hoidu al eretz v'shamayim, v'yom keren la'amo. Hoidu al eretz v'shamayim. His hoid, the shine of Hashem. That's what's in heaven and earth. That's what's on all the spiritual realities and all the physical realities. V'yom keren la'amo. But we have the keren. The keren is the thing itself, not the shine emanating from the keren. The keren, that's the reality of a Jew. So even the shamayim, even the heavens, which include even the malachim, they only get the hoid, they only get the ziv, they only get the shine, the glow, the ray. But we're it. We're the keren. And that's why we, as Yidden, as Jews, as neshamos, we receive the Torah. That's our relationship to the Torah that nothing else has. Because Torah is enrooted in Atzmas, right? It says when you take the Torah, you're taking Hashem himself. You're taking me, you're taking the Torah, you're taking me. The mitzvahs are rooted in Atzmas. You know, a mitzvah, tzapsa, chibur, it's one, it's bound up with Hashem. And the neshama is enrooted in Atzmas. So the neshama enrooted in Atzmas is bound up with the Torah enrooted in Atzmas, is bound up with the mitzvahs enrooted in Atzmos. It all is one. It all works. It's all one reality. That's, of course, why we are called the mehalchim. We walk, we move, because we have this ability to move. We have no fear, so to speak, of moving, of growing, of ascending to different levels, because we're never going to lose who we are, because we're hakika. We're rooted in Atzmos. We are the thing. That's why it says, of course, that a malach is an aymed. A malach can't move because it doesn't have the ability to move because its energy is so tenuous. It's constantly with chadshus. We have to constantly renew its reality. It can't start moving. And for sure, the whole thing would fall apart. The Rebbe says, you know what, actually? Neshamos have such power. We can even create movement in the malachim. The malachim, when they help us, they can ascend on our ladder, right? That's how we started off. Sulam Musav Artsav Roshel Magia Shemaima. This was the vision of Yaakov. Yaakov is the sulam. Yaakov is the ladder. The Jew is the ladder. But the Jew as the ladder, we're on one hand on the ground, and on one hand, we're in the Shemayim. And who's ascending and descending the ladder? The Malachim. So through the Jew who bridges heaven and earth, the Malach can ascend on that ladder. And of course, we said that ladder is also the ladder of Tefillah. This ladder represents, beyond everything we've been saying in the Maimer, Yaakov and the Malachim are walking on the Jew. More commonly, actually, more famously, we view the ladder as tefillah, right? We start off on the bottom of the ladder, maida'ani, haidu, haida'a, acknowledgement, and then we climb the rungs of the ladder. It's interesting when we're climbing to the height of the ladder. Do you know what the height of the ladder is? It says the height of the ladder. You'd think, but actually in the Maimer, the Rebbe, and I am sure, there are sources that say Shemona Esrei, but the Rebbe in the Maimer is actually saying the height of the ladder is Shema, which makes sense because from a Nigla perspective, we think of the height of prayer as Shemona Esrei. But from a pneumius perspective, from a Hasidic perspective, the height of prayer is Shema. That's that ultimate point of connection. That's the Iker Inyan of Tefillah is Shema. That's the main moment of our prayers is when we say Shema. And of course, to prepare ourselves for Shema, we have the brachas of Shema. That's the preparation for Shema, the 2 brachas. And it's interesting. There's a pasuk, which the Rebbe mentions here sort of briefly, a pasuk from Shir Hashirim, but later in the Maimer goes back to this pasuk. So I'm not giving you all the psukim. The Rebbe supports everything with psukim that I'm not giving too many of them, a few. But there's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim, beautiful pasuk, that says, Achalti ya'iri im dvishi. I ate the honeycombs with the honey. And the honey is Kriyas Shema. The honeycombs is the brachos of Kriyas Shema. I'm just going to take a second to focus on this, so the Rebbe developed it more later, but it was such a powerful idea. I'd like to leave you with a very powerful idea. Our Avodas Hashem is supposed to be honey. Our Avodas Hashem is supposed to be so sweet to us. And the Rebbe in the next section really develops this concept that if you're doing it without pleasure, it doesn't impact you the same way. Now, that's not supposed to be a downer. We should all say, all right, I'm done. I'm not doing with pleasure. So I guess the mimer is saying don't do. So I was good I came to class tonight because I've got this great excuse note on my Yiddishkeit. No, of course not. We do. But it's really amazing that Hashem wants us to do, and it should taste sweet. Hashem wants that Yiddishkeit should be sweet. Hashem wants that davening should be sweet. Hashem wants that learning should be sweet. Hashem wants that mitzvahs should be sweet. That Shabbos should be sweet. That Pesach, that Yontif, that Sneas. Hashem wants it to taste good to us. And the more it tastes good to us, the more tainu, that's literally the word the Rebbe uses when he develops this in the next ice, the more tainu we have in what we're doing, the more it impacts us. And the opposite is true as well. So here we're just referencing it, but we're going to expound on this pasuk from Shir Hashirim, that it's sweet, it's honey, it's honeycombs, it's sweet. We might say it's chocolate, it's sugar, it's candy, whatever as we're envisioning. But let's go back to, the authentic, OG sweetnesses. It's honey, it's honeycombs. So the Rebbe says the honey is Kriyas Shema. And the honeycombs from which the honey emerges is the brachos of Kriyas Shema. And the brachos of Kriyas Shema, that's the work of the Malachim, as the Rebbe brings psukim to prove all this. When we think of the Avodah of the Malachim, well, the Avodah of the Malachim, actually, very interestingly, the Maimers explain, that's the source of our Nefesh HaBahami. So contemplating the Avodah of the Malachim, which is a spiritual source of the Nefesh HaBahami, causes a bittul in the Nefesh HaBahami. But that's all the brachos of Kriyas Shema, right? Of course, we know the brachos of Shema. We're talking a lot about the Malachim there, right? We're talking about the Malachim. We're talking about their Avodah. And our animal soul is an animal like the Malachim are animals. They're holier animals, but they're a spiritual animal, and my animal soul is a spiritual animal. So my animal soul is rooted in them. And as I contemplate the content of the brachos of Shema, the Avodah of the Malachim, I'm piled on that piece inside of me similar to it, which is my Nefesh HaBahami. That's amazing. That's great. That's wonderful. I hope this is inspiring everyone to say the brachos of Kriyas Shema a lot better tomorrow. I hope this is inspiring me tomorrow to say the brachos of Kriyas Shema and really try to bash my animal soul in the process. Bittul of my animal soul. I could use it. But that's not Kriyas Shema. Because Kriyas Shema, that's the honey. That's the Avodah of the Neshamas. Shema Yisrael, right? We're talking about the Avodah of Yisrael. We're talking about the Avodah of the Neshamas. So we will stop here. And the Rebbe is going to continue to develop this. What does this mean, this difference of the Avodah of the Malachim and the Avodah of the Neshamos? And really focusing on the idea of Dvash, focusing on the idea of the sweetness, of the pleasure in Avodas Hashem. And how the more pleasure we have, the more Avodas Hashem is affecting us. So I'm leaving you with these thoughts. So homework. We can think a bit more as we daven, even at this very point of the brachos of Shema and Shema. And we could think about pleasure. Do I have pleasure in my Avodas Hashem? Well, find what you do have pleasure in, because hopefully we all have pleasure in some parts of Avodas Hashem. And try to maximize that, because the more pleasure, the more we're affected by what we're doing. And maybe other parts that we don't have as much pleasure in, and we do it, and that's great, and that's bittul, and we're the Evan, and that's amazing, and we're so happy that we can serve Hashem this way. But at the same time, maybe we could try to also find a pleasure in some of that. Stretch to find the pleasure, stretch to feel good and enjoy the process, because the more pleasure, the more it's really, really making an impact on us.